Some women don't chase, and yet, they are never forgotten. Their presence lingers long after their footsteps have faded, echoing in the hollow spaces of a man's memory. Not because they begged to be loved, not because they bent themselves into the shape of his desires, but because they understood what many dare not speak aloud: a man's ego is not strength. It is an empire built on fragile soil, desperate for validation, terrified of its own collapse. In a world where women are taught to bend, to soften, to make themselves small so they can be chosen, there exists another kind of woman. She does not kneel before the altar of his pride. She does not sacrifice her essence for fleeting attention. She knows something deeper, something dangerous, something every powerful woman eventually learns, the truths men hide even from themselves. Imagine her. She is not crowned by diamonds, nor does she seek the throne of his affection. She moves with a quiet power that cannot be named, only felt. Her silence is not weakness, but an unspoken challenge. A man's ego swells when admiration is poured upon it. It rises like a tide under the moonlight of validation. But what happens when the moon does not shine? When the tide does not come? This is the first hidden truth she knows. His ego is a mask. Behind every boast, every display of dominance, every claim of certainty, there is a boy still seeking proof that he matters. Jung called this the persona, the mask worn for the world, crafted from fragments of expectation, stitched together with fear of being unseen. Many fall in love with the mask, believing it to be the man himself, but she sees beyond it. Her gaze is steady, piercing, dangerous, not because it wounds, but because it illuminates. She does not applaud his performance, and this quiet refusal unsettles him more than any insult could. For the male ego feeds not on truth, but on illusion, and illusions crumble under the weight of true sight. Desire often feels like conquest, threshold, claim. Yet every conquest leaves him emptier, each new victory another hollow echo. The second hidden truth she knows is this: the male ego is addicted not to love, but to the reflection of power in another's eyes. When he seeks her, it is not always union he craves. It is worship. It is the intoxicating thrill of being needed, admired, obeyed. He mistakes control for connection, and in that mistake, his soul starves. She watches his patterns unfold like a shadow dance. The grand gestures, the promises laced with silent demands, the way his touch seeks not intimacy but ownership. She feels the tremor of fear beneath it all, the fear that without her surrender, he ceases to exist as the man he imagines himself to be. Jung spoke of the anima, the inner feminine that dwells within every man. When unhealed, it manifests as obsession, as hunger, as control masked as passion. He chases not the woman, but the lost piece of himself she represents. And she knows better than to let herself become his mirror. So she stands firm, offering no reflection to his craving gaze. Her silence tells him what no other has dared to say: a woman is not a canvas for his projections, nor a mirror for his greatness. She is a world unto herself, vast, unclaimable, untamed, and in that realization, his projections shatter. The throne he built on borrowed glory crumbles, leaving him face to face with the truth he has long avoided: love cannot be possessed, only met soul to soul. But beneath the mask, beneath the craving for power, there is a darker layer still, a layer that trembles with the echoes of old wounds, the humiliation of boyhood moments where his voice was silenced, where his heart was dismissed, where his tenderness was mocked. These are the silent architects of his ego, the shadow he hides behind every performance of strength. This shadow is born of pain and fear, stitched together with shame. When love approaches, he feels it as danger. When intimacy nears, his defenses rise. His ego becomes a shield, a fortress, a desperate attempt to control what once hurt him. But when a woman stands before him unafraid, refusing to feed his illusions, the shadow stirs violently. Silence becomes rejection. Distance becomes betrayal. His unhealed wounds scream louder than his reason, driving him to grasp, to bind, to chain her presence before it slips away. She knows this third truth. A man ruled by his shadow will confuse possession for safety, dominance for love, and a woman who allows herself to be bound by that fear does not rescue him. She merely becomes another cage he builds around his loneliness. So she does not fight him, nor does she surrender. She simply refuses to step inside the prison of his unhealed self. Her power lies not in confrontation, but in the boundary of her own worth. Some battles of the soul, she knows, are not hers to fight. Watch closely what happens when she chooses distance over drama. Every step she takes away bends his reality. His ego expected devotion, not detachment. The narrative he built crumbles when she no longer plays her assigned role. This is not a game of manipulation. It is the unveiling of truth. Love cannot survive where it is demanded, where it is conditional upon surrender. In her retreat, the silence roars louder than any argument could. It is the mirror he has avoided all his life, showing him the emptiness of pride, the futility of power without love. And sometimes, only in this aching void does a man finally confront himself. Distance is her act of self-preservation, but also an invitation to awakening not for him alone, but for herself. She is not responsible for mending his shadow. She owes him neither her pain nor her peace. Her worth is not tied to how much she can endure to soothe his ego. This realization transforms her. She no longer walks on eggshells, no longer bends under the weight of his insecurities. Her detachment is a sanctuary, a reclaiming of self. And in that space, love, if it is ever to come, will no longer be forged in chains, but in freedom. There are women who spend years feeding egos, watering deserts that never bloom, believing that devotion will one day awaken the man beneath the armor. Some die waiting for tenderness that never arrives, sacrificed on the altar of someone else's fear. But there are women who awaken, who see clearly the pattern, who feel the cost of giving what cannot be reciprocated. These women learn the truths hidden behind every performance of dominance, every illusion of control. They know that the male ego's hunger is bottomless when it is unhealed, and that their love cannot fill the void carved by his unacknowledged wounds. So they stop giving what is not theirs to give. They step out of the role of savior, out of the endless cycle of soothing and proving and pleading. They become mirrors of a different kind, not reflecting his grandeur, but reflecting his absence when he chooses pride over intimacy. And in that haunting emptiness, sometimes a man meets himself for the first time. Sometimes he begins to strip away the mask, to face the trembling boy beneath, to build a love that does not ask for worship but for truth. But whether he does or not, that is his journey, not hers. She does not wait. She does not return to the game. She walks away not out of anger, but out of reverence, for herself, for love, for life too vast to be spent feeding fragile crowns that fear their own fragility. The woman who walks away in silence isn't weak. She simply sees more. She sees the fragile boy beneath the crown, the hunger that swallows love whole, the prison walls built from old pain and new pride. And she knows a powerful woman is never a servant to the ego. She is sovereign of her own soul, a force that cannot be claimed, a truth that cannot be silenced. And once she has tasted the freedom of her own worth, no throne, no crown, no man's trembling empire can ever tempt her to kneel again.